Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first short webinar in our new series, Can Cycling and Micromobility Deliver a Modern and Sustainable Future? My name is Thomas Jérémy Hayden-Lefebvre. I am the editor-in-chief of the Green Mobility magazine. These sessions will be part of a wider project and a forthcoming book written by Giles Bailey, which explores how cycling and micromobility can make cities more sustainable, livable, and economically resilient. The book brings together a decade of insights from across Europe and beyond, looking at how policy, investment, and innovation are shaping the way we move and interact with the city and well beyond. At the Green Mobility magazine, we cover the broader policy landscape behind these developments, from urban planning to clean transport, industrial, and energy transition. And this collaboration continues that work and extends the conversation beyond the printed page. The idea behind these webinars is to take some of the topics raised in the book and discuss them in a concise and informal way with guests, such as Raphael, who has joined us today. And each session will focus on a single theme. Today, that is Velo-Tourism. The aim is to share ideas, spark discussions, and encourage you to join us on this journey. From time to time, we may also go beyond the themes explored in the book at related questions, shaping the wider mobility and cycling landscape. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Giles and Raphael to introduce themselves and today's topic.
Thank you, Thomas. And again, I'm Giles Bailey, and I'm a consultant, innovator, and writer based in London in the UK. And today I'll be joined with my colleague, Raphael Cavalcanti. I'll pass to Raphael to briefly introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm based in Mainz, Germany. Pleasure to be with you here today. Much like Giles, I'm also a consultant in the digital and transportation space.
Excellent. So over the next 15 minutes, we're going to briefly explore some of the issues of bicycle tourism, or velo-tourism as I like to call it, and provide some reflections on this aspect of the wider cycling and micromobility agenda. There's a lot to cover, and so we can't explore all of the items in this short webinar. So let's dive right into some of the details and start exploring this topic. So firstly, what is bicycle tourism or velo-tourism? And more importantly, why does it matter? So Raphael, I'll pass to you to start with your first reflections, and I'll add more.
Sure. Thanks, Josh. So I define velo-tourism as you performing the act of tourism or traveling for leisure while using your bicycle as your primary means of transportation. Usually people tend to think, I'll just take my bicycle from home to a train station, but here you're basically taking a bicycle most likely from your home to your destination, or sometimes home to a train station, and taking a train to close to your destination and using your bike as a part of your means of transportation. So it replaces a car, a boat, or in certain instances even, or a train. So yeah, it's how to enjoy yourself doing tourism while using your bicycle as your primary means of transportation.
Excellent. And again, I would add, it's also about different kinds of cycling. So there's obviously racing. So you're trying to do speed with yourself or by yourself or with a group. It can be touring, a much more leisurely day out, again, by yourself or with friends or family. And even mountain biking. So in a sense, you're off main roads and actually exploring a more rural area. And it can be one day or multi-day, and you can get into the details of how you might kind of compose a multi-day journey. So it can be in rural areas and cities, very locally, or actually at a distance. You may travel somewhere to actually do this velo-tourism. But again, particularly on the point of why does it matter? It matters for many reasons, probably your own health. But there's a really important point around economic impact and dispersal. I mean, there's quite an issue in tourism generally. You can look at Barcelona or Venice. Everybody goes to the one place and no one can move in the one place. But velo-tourism offers the ability to spread out tourism to actually very local, very niche areas and actually spread out that economic benefit, which I think would argue is quite an important issue in tourism hotspots. Actually, the three of us are in Europe, but in places throughout the world, that economic impact really matters. So in a sense, what are some of the basics that are required for velo-tourism to be successful? And again, I'll let Raphael start again, and then I'll add some more.
I think you've given a very good definition of the different categories of velo-tourism, because as you say, it's as broad as the world of cycling. But I think there are a handful of key elements which are important. Number one, good, decent planning or having a planning tool to allow you to be able to use infrastructure which is good for riding long distances over a short or a long period of time. Having an adequate bicycle as you as a cyclist, so that can take on whether it's a couple kilos or up to 10 kilos of baggage with you or luggage around with you, because you will be traveling with everything that you will be wearing and using over the course of your trip. So those are key things. And if you think about beyond the bicycle, also the spare parts and some things of the sort. But beyond that, which is a subset of the planning, it's also having good cycling infrastructure that connects between cities. Usually, if you're, let's say, using more the road cycling aspect or even the gravel cycling aspect where you're doing a multi-day tour, doing that exclusively on the roads is a bit daunting for a lot of people. So making sure that you're adapting the route planning to your level of risk, or at least the level of risk that you're accustomed to, that you're willing to take. And also, not to forget, part of the planning is making sure that you have adequate stops for refreshments, food, and also having an adequate place to leave your bicycle overnight if you're either camping, for instance, which some people do, the so-called bike camping, or if you're thinking of keep going to hotels when you're staying in between cities on a multi-day tour, then that the hotels also have the adequate infrastructure that provides safe and secure storage for your bicycle overnight, because it will be your means of moving forward. So I think those are some of the key elements that definitely need to be in place for someone to really enjoy Velo-Tourism properly on a multi-day tour.
Absolutely. And as you're going through that list, one or two I would add in as well. I think you talked about the food options or refreshments, toilets. Actually, it's across a wide range of people a very important issue. Safety, but also security. Signage, maps, and actually get to tools. Do you have integrated online tools, or do you have posted maps along the route? All of these things make the tourism experience more successful, and more pleasant. And we go back to infrastructure. Actually, as a Velo-Tourist as well, one of the key things is predictability and stability in the infrastructure. The infrastructure does not need to be perfect, perfectly paved, and it'd be nice if it was nice and wide, but there are other issues. But it's to understand that through your daily journey, through the experience of a multi-day journey with your friends, with your family, with your children, you have some surety that the route will continue at a certain level of quality, and you won't suddenly be put on a major road with trucks and lorries and your little kids, and what do we do now? That actually destroys that tourism experience. Predictability, quality, and clearly separating cycle tourism from heavy traffic flows is important. I know this is a difficult issue in lots of places around the world to make this continuous, but you really cannot expect large numbers of tourists to cycle in mixed traffic throughout the entire day with heavy traffic flows. It is a very, very poor tourism experience. And as we'll come to at the very end, there are places who've made this work, but you need to think about how you can separate out those traffic flows to encourage those tourists to visit your area, to spend their money, to improve their health, and to enjoy the tourism offer that you're offering wherever in the world. Time is marching on, so I think interesting question. Is this a niche activity or a leisure for everyone? I'll pass to Raphael to start, but kind of where do we put this when people are thinking about how important this is?
Because it's the term Velo-Tourism or bike tourism can be defined in so many different ways, it is per definition for everyone. You'll see, for instance, here where I live in Germany or in Switzerland and Austria, a lot of elderly people will use buses and that have the capability of transporting multiple bicycles, and they'll move from city to city and they'll do biking tours for a day. They'll cycle anywhere between 30 and 40 kilometers and go back to their point of origin. And you'll also see bike packers who will have everything they need for a 2-week tour, including tents and all that. And they'll have done all of the planning intensively on their own with using tools such as Komoot or anything like such as Komoot. So the simple answer is it is for everyone. It's just about how do you fit, how do you want to perform this kind of activity. And that's, I think, is the key definition. Is do you want to cycle simply just to see scenery? You want to cycle more as an adventure where you want to see new things and also push yourself physically, and potentially be open to having to push your bike through mud or through areas which are not as cyclable as others. So I think it is an activity that can be done by pretty much anyone, as long as you're keeping in mind the planning of the safety aspect of things, and you can always sort of adapt that level of, I want to be more adventurous, I want to be less adventurous. I think the one key element that does really change how people or how open this is to the different demographics is the infrastructure. I think that is the single most important thing that people will usually keep in mind when thinking, I'm going to do a bike packing tour, I'm going to go cycling between these two cities. You wouldn't see elderly people doing that here in Germany if we didn't have as good cycling infrastructure between cities, for instance.
Excellent. And I'm just going to throw in two statistics. The UN World Tourism Organization estimates that tourism is growing 3 to 5% per year, 3 to 5% per year across the globe, and that is expected to continue. Tourism is big, big business. And again, you should ask yourself as a local authority or town or city, as part of Velo-Tourism, how you're taking part of that kind of growth industry. There are 2.3 billion cycle tourism trips in the EU in 2018, and that's worth a value of 44 billion euro. Again, and up to 500,000 jobs are being supported. And again, that's just within Europe, other statistics from other parts of the world, but again, a big industry where you can make an impact on supporting your local economy. And I'm going to, well, the next question I was going to ask about what good practice looks like, and as time's moving on, I'll throw in a few that I've seen and heard of that I like, and then I'll pass back to Raphael again. I mean, certainly where I live in the UK, the Thames Valley, the North Downs are renowned for cycling as a popular pastime. Isn't always the highest quality routes, but again, very popular in this part of the world. But also the Loire Valley in France, excellent infrastructure. The shores of Lake Geneva in Switzerland and France. Hudson Valley in New York, north of New York City. And one that I'm keen to one day get to is the Shimagami Kaido in Japan, which is between Honshu and one of the smaller islands in Japan. I've heard very good things about the level of infrastructure and promotion they're doing in terms of the cycle tourism offer. Many, many other great examples, but look around you and find out where it's being done well, is being supported, and touching on some of the issues we've talked about, and how you can look to grow those kinds of cycle tourism aspects in your own community. Any other ones you might like to add, Raphael?
I'm obviously biased because I've done most of my bike packing in Germany and Austria, but I would say Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the north of Italy, where I've done cycling, have exceptional infrastructure which is dedicated to cycling. Also, the signage means you do not have to rely on any sort of digital topography or cartography to actually take specific routes. So I think these countries are sort of setting best practice because they cater with their infrastructure and the signage to as broad an audience as possible. And there's only one aspect that I wanted to touch upon, which you touched upon in the last bit, with respect to the data. Unfortunately, even we see that there's a lot going on, and the data point that you selected dates back to 2018. There is a bit of a nebulous sort of definition of what is Velo-Tourism, and that doesn't help us capture enough of the data. How much of an economic contribution does Velo-Tourism actually generate? And that's one of the things I think that is part of your book, right? Is that the data needs to be presented so that we can actually incentivize this much more strongly. And that is one of the things that I'd like to see more of, is not just cycling happens within cities, but how does cycling between cities and this mode of cycling, or this leisurely activity, contribute to economies which are not just focused on the industries or the services in urban areas. So that's also, I think, an important point in your book. And I'm sorry to sort of go on it, but I think it's super important. If you don't have the data, you can't really make policies to improve.
So thank you very much, Raphael. And again, there's much more we could cover, and this is a small snippet, actually, but I'm actually going to hold at this point. Some really important issues around velotourism. We haven't actually talked about bikes on trains, which is another whole issue which requires our entire separate webinar. But at this point, to finish off within kind of our proposed time scale, I'll pass to Thomas for any kind of reflections on what he's heard, and then he can draw the webinar to a close.
Thank you, Giles, and thank you, Raphael, for your insights. Indeed, I think one statistic that popped out to me was the 4 billion euro value add of velotourism. It's not hard to see how. I mean, a velotourist will stop at a shop, buy a bottle of water and maybe a chocolate bar to keep themselves going. That easily adds up to €4 per person. I myself, as you might know, I've done a little bit of velotourism. I am nothing like you two gents, not a specialist. I did some in France, in Belgium, and in Portugal. And one thing that I think I would mention, I would first off agree that infrastructure is key. Infrastructure consistency is absolutely key. But another topic I think we should all discuss as well eventually, and that council should really take into account, and local authorities, is the interaction between velotourists, cyclists, and any wildlife or domestic animals that could be on the path. Indeed, from my perspective and my experience in Portugal, it's one pain point that I've had, particularly with dogs. I like dogs, but I don't like dogs when they run after me and my bike. I think many other velotourists would feel the same. So I think this is definitely something we should all discuss further. But as mentioned earlier, this discussion is part of a wider project and a forthcoming book called Can Cycling and Micromobility Deliver a Modern and Sustainable City, written by Giles with a bit of Raphael's input, if I'm not mistaken, published by the Green Mobility magazine. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would really invite each and every listener to take a look at the project, take a look at our crowdfunding campaign, which is currently ongoing. Any contributions you do make really do help us bring the book to market. It helps us print the book in Europe and also allows us to continue these conversations with specialists such as Raphael that connect policy, practice, and the cycling public. You can find further details and a link to the campaign on our website and in the description below. Thank you once again for joining us, and we look forward to welcoming you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.